Hello. There we go. Well, thank you, Mr. Nation, for letting me know that there was no sound on the last 6 minutes. We'll edit that out in post. Let me tell thank you here. Thank you. Maybe I should put chat a little closer to me so that I can see communications from the audience. All right. Let's just start that intro completely over again. Hey man, you turn in for a live stream and this is what you get. You get stream problems. Okay. Was I recording? No, I wasn't even recording audio either, so that's cool. So yeah, I do have to start over. 7 minutes. That's not bad. Okay, here we go. Hey everyone, welcome to the Taoist Corner podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Stewart, and I'll be here for about the next hour going through 365 Tao by Deng Ming-Dao, which is a daily meditation guide by quite a wise gentleman who wanted to take ancient Taoist philosophies and ideas and apply them to our modern life. Today is January 7th, 2024, our very first episode of 2024 of the year. So if you made it, congratulations. There are lots of things to be thankful for. And one of them is that you're here because you know what? Some people didn't make it to 2024. So yeah, be thankful the sun came up today for you. So if you're not familiar, Taoism is an ancient Chinese philosophy and religion created about 2,500 years ago by a legendary figure named Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu was legend has it anyway, was a librarian, and he decided that he was going to give up his daily life. And on the way out of the kingdom on the back of a water buffalo, a border guard stopped him and asked him to write down a bunch of words of wisdom for him. And he wrote this, the Dai De Jing. This is the Stephen Mitchell English Pocket Translation. Even if Lao Tzu didn't really exist, it doesn't matter because the wisdom within is still amazing and has survived thousands of years. Now, what does it teach? Well, Taoism teaches to live harmoniously with everyone around you, with everything around you, to live harmoniously within yourself, and to live, if you can do that, then you can live a happier, smoother life in existence, and those around you too. And what we do is we work through a chapter supposed to work through it every day. I don't quite work through it every day. I work through about 5 or 6 chapters a week, and then I talk about them on the stream. The streams happen every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Central Time. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can watch all of my audio fails live. Before I started this stream, we didn't have any audio for about 7 minutes. So this is the second time I'm doing this. All right. But I am the founder and chief editor of the Taoist Online, where we publish articles not just about Taoism, but also philosophy, religion, spirituality, mindfulness, and kind of all the above at the Taoist.online, which is a medium.com publication. I am also starting on January 15th, a second publication called Project Jade. Think of Project Jade as a curated selection of articles from the Taoist Online where I tip that writer a little bit extra to republish their articles on a non-medium external website. It's going really well. I have a great slate of articles that's going to go live on January 15th. So I hope you will tune in. You can follow not only myself, but the Taoist Online and Project Jade on Mastodon. So if you happen to be a Mastodon user, please follow us. And we'd love to have you. We'd love to see you. Okay. One more announcement before we jump into chapters for today. A shameless plug. My book was released this week. I wrote a book. It's called The Beginner's Guide to Taoism. Shocker on the subject, it fits the brand, right? But this took me about a year to go through. It is available on all ebook and print platforms. The Amazon print version is coming soon, hopefully today. I can finish uploading that manuscript. The ebook is available. You can also go to my Gumroad, the Taoist Online Gumroad, and buy the PDF or ebook there as well. Print versions are $10, ebooks are $5, and maybe on Gumroad, maybe you can pick your own price. Yeah, that sounds good. Okie dokie, let's get started. Now that we've done the intro twice, here we go. Chapter 84, Intellect. For those of you who are new, the chapters always start off with a little poem, and then I'll read the entire chapter, which is very short, and then I'll talk about them for a little bit. So, in case you're not able to see the video right now and you're on Spotify, that's what we do. Here we go. 84, Intellect. Scholars, drunk on words and obscure meanings, weave a tangled web of concordances. Simple practice never occurs to them. Give up education, and the world will be better. There are many who seek Tao through the intellect. They reveal in thousands of concordances, seek similarities in all the world's religions, conduct learned discourses for enthralled audiences. But they would reach the truth faster if they tied their thoughts to experience. The intellect is inherently dualistic. It makes distinctions and creates new connections between concepts and calls that meaning, quote unquote. This type of analytical thinking is extremely limited in the face of Tao, which is not fully rational, not fully quantitative, not fully describable. Though most followers of Tao are learned, they also realize that the intellect is but one aspect in what must be a multifaceted approach to Tao. It is said one must give up education, not because we should be dumb, but because we must seek a level of consciousness beyond the intellect. We must study, but not to the point that emphasis on experience and meditation is lost. If we combine the intellect and direct experience with our meditative mind, then there will be no barrier to the wordless perception of reality. So in Taoism, there really is a idea that you can be too knowledgeable, you can be too educated. I hate to use this example, but I use it all the time. That is the space program. Or like academia, just in general. There's a lot of money and studying going on, and it's very hard to see how that affects us, right? Like, what's the purpose behind it? Like, if you're spending $1 million to figure out that, hey, sleep is really good for you, like, I got it. Sleep is really good for me, right? Like, why bother? Like, why do those studies? Like, what's the purpose? Or looking at the stars for knowledge's sake. I don't enjoy looking at stars, but there is something to be said about burying yourself in academics when there's a lot to experience here on the ground. And even in this chapter, it talks about when you study the Tao, when you study Taoism, you can read all the books you want and you can memorize each chapter word for word. But if you don't spend time to really internalize what you're learning, to try and feel Tao, then you're not getting it. The very first chapter of Tao Te Ching is the Tao that can be named is not the internal Tao. The entire first chapter is essentially designed to tell you that you cannot describe what Tao truly is through words. You have to experience it. You have to look within yourself to find and to learn Tao. And how do you do that? Well, through meditation, through guidance, through self-cultivation. There are lots of ways, but reading and watching videos online may not be the best way, right? It's like trying to it's like trying to explain to someone what love is. Like, how do you know what love is? Well, when you're in love, then you'll know, right? Something you just have to experience for yourself. Like the Matrix. No one can tell you what the Matrix is. You have to experience it, right? One of those things. By the way, there's a lot of Eastern philosophy in the Matrix, just in case you're a fan of that movie. But it's true. I was told once that the most Taoist thing you could do is like memorize the Tao Te Ching and then forget all about it and then come back and rediscover it, right? Like the yin yang, where it turns, where you have yin and then it turns into yang and then it turns back into yin again. Yeah, how Taoist is that? And you'll find that with your life. Sometimes you can read a book and then come back to it 2 or 3 years later and you discover it all over again. It feels new and you refresh yourself. But yeah, there's a lot that you can learn through your education, and there's a lot that you can't learn through your education. And just be mindful of that, especially when you start to learn about the Tao. Just know that it takes time internally to really get to know yourself and get to know what's going on. So Taoists don't want you to be stupid, but we do want you to get your nose out of books and look inside yourself for a change. Experience the world from within. Okay. Chapter 85. Retrospective. You could here labor 10 years under a master, trying to discern whether the teachings are true. But all you might learn is this: one must live in one's own life. When one starts out learning a spiritual system, there are many absolute assertions that the masters make. These must be accepted with a provisional faith. Each must be tested and proved to yourself before you can believe in them. You will be exposed to all types of esoteric knowledge, but you need only be concerned with whether or not you can make them work for yourself. There will come an intermediate, joyous point where you find that certain techniques work even better than the scriptures claim. In the wake of these discoveries, you will also find that life continues to be just as thorny and problematic as ever. Does this mean the study of Tao is useless? No. It only means that you have been laboring to equip yourself with skill. You must still go out and live your life to the end. When you look back and realize that you have absorbed the teachings so thoroughly that they have become routine, it is not the time to reject the system you have learned. It is the time to utilize what you have learned. You must express yourself, take action in the world, create new circumstances for yourself and others. Only then does the long acquisition of skill become worthwhile. Indeed. So my interpretation of this is what we were just talking about, where you have to internalize things. Michael Jordan gave this interview back in the early 90s, back when he was just winning NBA titles over and over and over again. And they asked him, how do you do the things you do? how are you so good? Like, what do you like? Do you plan? Like, what is going on?" And he said, "I'm going to summarize that he just does it. It just happens. That he just somehow manages to make these crazy, insane basketball shots. It just came." Here's the key: it came naturally to him. Right? He had trained his whole life and learned all the skills and had all the knowledge. But at the moment, at the spur of the moment, he could just do things. And so too is our own study of philosophy or religion or really anything. But we're here about the Tao. We can read these scriptures until our faces are blue, until we know everything. And if you study and study and study and study and study, eventually what will happen is you'll know these so much that you'll find your practice becomes effortless. Your routine will begin to incorporate these practices. Now, for me, my example was breathing practices. I developed tinnitus, which is a severe ringing in ears, about 2 years ago now. And in order to not drive myself crazy, I learned how to lower my heart rate through slow breathing. I use the 4-7-8 technique, which is where you breathe in for 4, you hold for 7, and you breathe out for 8. And if you're going to try that, remember it's not seconds, it's counts, which are a little faster than seconds. If you hold your breath for 7 seconds, you may start to panic. But yeah, they're counts. But the point is it worked. And I began to put myself to sleep every night by lowering my heart rate. And what I noticed after about a year of this is when I would get stressed, it happens very naturally now. I don't think about it. I just take breaths and then breathe out slowly. A quick, deep breath and then slow exhales, exhaling. And that's it. That's the practice. That's what daily conscious practice eventually becomes, is intuitive, spur of the moment, spontaneous realization of what you've been practicing. So take meditation, for example. When you meditate every day, as often as you can, your conscious practice becomes unconscious behavior. And that's just how practicing works. If we go back to Michael Jordan, practicing basketball every day for your life, he's able to unconsciously use these skills when needed. Think of a soldier. We put them through training and training and training and training. And that way, when they go to war, when they go to battle, those skills can come out without them thinking about them. Yeah, one of the listeners in our chat just now said that they also have sleeping problems. It is rough. I've never been a good sleeper. I'm 41 years old. I spent probably the last 15 years of my life just sitting there in bed and waiting 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and eventually you just get so tired you black out. That has been me for a really, really long time. And the 4-7-8 technique or box breathing is a different one. Yeah, it just comes very, very naturally now. And it helps. Hopefully it helps you too. But yeah, to get back to the chapter, when you learn the spiritual system, you're going to learn all these practices and ideas and circumstances, and some of them you're going to agree with and some of them you're not going to agree with. But when you internalize these practices, when you are able to really combine your life with these things that you're doing and learning, that's where that key, that golden moment lies, is in the internalization of it. And that doesn't mean that everything is going to work out for you all the time. You're not always going to be happy. That's an unnatural occurrence. We're not we did not evolve to be robots. Okay. I know some practices which have you just push all the emotions down. And if you've ever watched Star Trek, you become Vulcans and you're all logic based and you never have emotions. Maybe that works for some people. There's no way that's going to happen. I get mad. I've got 3 kids. I've got 2 jobs. I don't know how people do it, but I get mad. I get tired. I am happy, right? I'm angry. I'm sad. I'm frustrated. And the goal for Taoists isn't to bury these emotions through our training. It's to use these emotions and to explore them and express them in a harmonious and healthy way. And that's the goal, right? To live a healthier, happier existence, just to get through it to the end, right? And we can do it. We can do it through study, practice, cultivation, internalizing, habit forming. We can do it. We can get there. All right. Let's move on. Chapter 86. Images. Sound, smell, taste, image, touch, sleep. Can you think without clinging to these forms? A thought without shape is rare. Knowledge of Tao rarer still. Our mind needs to cling to some object in order to function in its usual modes. If you look at your memories, you will find that most are tied to some sensory image. The thought of being in the country brings up a certain fragrance. You, quote, see relationships in a certain way. We may do math problems or compose something to say to our companions, but we will still think in numbers and words. Some people make the mistake of rejecting this type of thinking, but we need to use these modes in order to function. In the everyday world, when it comes to knowing Tao, thought tied to sensory images is not enough to bring complete realization. Dualistic thinking cannot be used to know Tao, but don't discard it as long as ordinary functioning in the world is necessary. When one meditates, one must use an aspect of consciousness that does not cling to external forms. This type of consciousness is beyond the senses. Some call these states of mind superconsciousness, samadhi, nirvana, or enlightenment. These are mere names. All that matters is getting to these states. Then all labels fall away. This kind of hints at the point of meditation, doesn't it? Like, what's the goal, right? Like, what's all this practice for? And if you've ever meditated for a really long time, like 30 minutes or beyond, an hour, at some point you reach this place mentally, physically, where things start to change around you. Your body begins to feel a little differently. You begin to hear a little differently. It's something that is rather difficult to put into words if you haven't experienced it. Right? Getting back to the couple of chapters ago, like, you really need to experience these things to know what they mean and what they are. And there's a lot of different words. You can say enlightenment, you can say nirvana, you can say whatever the culture, whatever the word is. But remember that things are not words, right? And emotions are not words, right? Like, this isn't a book, and it's not inherently a book. If I go to France and I say book, they'll have a different word for it. And if I go to China and I say book, they won't know what that means because they have a different word for it. So too are these states of our mind and our emotions and our feelings. There's nothing inherent about the word sad or touch. It's just sounds we made up to describe a thing or a state. So when you meditate and you get to that point where you begin to notice changes going on, you can call it whatever you want to, but Taoists believe that you can live your whole life there. You don't have to sit with your eyes closed. You don't have to put on soft music or light candles or whatever. You can live your day-to-day life in this state of being where everything just flows out from you naturally. So that feeling you get when you meditate for a long time, uh, try to hang on to it for as long as you can. Bring yourself out of that state very slowly. And in fact, I would ask you not to meditate by sitting still in a quiet room. I know there are some practices that, oh, you have to sit this certain way and you have to be in a closed room and the lights have to be off. I, the Taoist teachers I've learned from would not agree with that really at all. I mean, you can, but walking around can be meditation. Doing dishes can be meditation. Cleaning your room can be meditation. It's all a form of just how you're working with your body and with your mind and your physical actions. And those connections can be maintained through all things, through all types of services. Um, it takes a lot of practice. I'm not saying I'm there or anywhere close, but you can get there. That's the idea. Is that if you take the time and you dedicate your life and you dedicate yourself to your practice, you can just hang out in this really cool, fun state forever until the end. In the chapter, it says, when one meditates, one must use an aspect of consciousness that does not cling to external forms. So that's pretty close. You will begin to feel, it's almost like you're floating. Like you don't feel, obviously you're not floating, but you feel very light. You begin to feel, it's not lightheaded, it's not dizzy. Like I said, it's hard to describe. But try it sometime. Try to sit there and not do anything and close your eyes and just focus on your breathing for 20 minutes, right? And when you get there, you'll know it. You'll definitely feel it. And that's what we should do. That's the key here. Greetings from snowy Finland. Whoa. Wow. Someone in chat. That's amazing. Yeah. Where are you guys? If you're watching this live, watching this stream, and it's cool. It's cool to see everyone kind of show up and learn more about you. That's why I do this. All right. Let's move on. Chapter 87, Integration. Be still to know the absolute. Be active to know the outer. The two spring from the same source. All of life is one whole. In stillness, one seeks the absolute Tao. There is neither beauty nor ugliness in it, because it has no opposite. It is called absolute. By contrast, nothing of this world is absolute, because all things that we experience are relative. Seeking the absolute way may be amongst the greatest goals, but you cannot remain on your meditation cushion forever. You must go out and explore life as well. This is the investigation of the outer Tao, that aspect of Tao that flows through all existence. You must not fail to explore anything that interests you. Any skill you want to master should be learned. Any subject that arouses curiosity should be examined. Every insecurity should be overcome. Every question should be answered. If you do not do this, then you cannot freely flow with the outer Tao. Every one of your uncertainties will be an obstacle. Initially, it will seem as if there is no connection between your time meditating and the outer things in your life. After all, the masters themselves constantly stress the difference between the spiritual and the social. But eventually, you will reach a point where the uh, quiescence, I can't pronounce that word, of contemplation and the activeness of living are integrated. Then there is no anxiety about whether one is living a spiritual life or not. You realize that it is all part of the same seamless whole. Deep, deep thoughts for this one. All right. So let's use words for just a second and try to define Tao. Okay. So Tao is everything. Everything is Tao. Everything flows from Tao. But Tao does not control anything. Tao does what it does. It allows things to occur inside of it. Think of Tao as a river. Okay. A river flows in one direction. Maybe it curves, but it flows downstream. If you're in a boat and you capsize, right, you fall out of the boat, you are floating down this river. Now, sometimes that river could be raging, could be calm, and you have choices. You can swim against the current. You can float and lie still with the current. You can swim down current a little faster. You can swim to the side. So the existence of Tao does not take away your free will, but you cannot be without. You cannot be outside of Tao. Now, in this chapter, it's talking specifically the outward Tao, right? The water. Now, if we're all Tao, how is there inner and outer? Well, we need to explain things somehow. So try and let go of the understanding of everything is Tao for just a second, just so we can explore the two areas. Now, we've talked about internal, which is meditation, practice, breathing. But there's also a world around you. There's the, classic, you'll find classic Taoists who, run out and they live in the woods and they just stay there and they just kind of shut society off from them. And they only come in, they like beg for food, or they live off the land and eat grass, and their teeth have fallen out and they haven't showered in like 5 years. Like those are like the classic Taoists, like the hermits who go live in a cave. But you know what? I live in Texas in the United States, and there are no caves here. There's also no forests anywhere near me, so I don't get that choice. I have a family. I have 2 jobs. I can't cut myself off, guys. So like, then what? Right? Yeah, cool. I can meditate. Yeah, cool. I can self-cultivate. But what about all the crazy shit going around me? Well, that needs to be explored as well. And how do you do that? Well, you allow things to happen and flow around you. So this gets really specific in this chapter. Here in the middle section, any skill you want to master should be learned. Any subject that arouses curiosity should be examined. Every insecurity should be overcome. Every question should be answered. There you go. That's it. How do you... Let me put it to you this way. Do you have a pet? Do you have a dog? I just got a cat like a week ago. And those animals just kind of do what they want. I mean, you can call them, especially my cat. Like, you can call her. She's not going to come over here unless she really wants to. And like, yeah, you can walk over there and pet her, but I mean, if she doesn't want to be pet, she's going to run off. She just does what she wants. If she's curious about something, she walks over there and smells it. If she wants to taste it, she'll go over there and lick it. I mean, as a human, don't lick everything. Like, don't just go licking things. That's bad. That might be dangerous. But if you're curious about something, go learn about it. If you have always wanted to learn how to paint, go buy paints. If you've always wanted to learn how to play piano, go find a keyboard, right? Go learn, study, explore. The world is here for is here for us to explore. You should not hide yourself away in fear and then be like, well, I'm just going to focus on internal Tao and I'll be fine, because that's not living in harmony with the world around you. You're cutting out such a huge part of life that it's just not going to go well. Humans are social animals. I don't know what to say. Humans need that type of interaction. We're curious, right? We have ideas and thoughts to help us survive. And, living in harmony with yourself and with the world around you means that we do explore these things. Curiosity is a natural feeling. And as I said earlier, being a Taoist or studying about Taoism doesn't mean you cut off these natural emotions. It means you embrace these natural emotions, but you focus them appropriately so that when they do arise, they don't own you, right? You use them for your benefit to live that harmonious lifestyle. So I wanted to start a podcast 3 months ago. So I did. Who's going to listen? I don't know. Maybe nobody. But it did. And here we are. And now, I have this crazy screen behind me, which you can tell is very green by the lines around my head. But I have it. And it's going. 5 years ago, I wanted to learn more about Taoism, and I did. I just started reading about it. I joined some classes, learned how to do some Qigong, started meditating, started breathing, and here I am. If I had been afraid, I'd look at everything I wouldn't have got, or look at everything I wouldn't have earned, or all the friends I wouldn't have, or all the people I've been able to, share my story with. You have to follow your curiosity. You have to follow your dreams, to put it in a more Western phrase, right? Follow your dreams, the American dream, do what you want, be who you can be the best you can. All those sayings really get at the truth of you can't just sit still. I mean, if we go back to the river example, the river's going to push you downstream. So even if you think you're sitting still, you're not. And even if you try and swim up the stream, you're still in the river, right? It's still pushing you around. So you can either struggle with it or you can just let it ride. And as Taoists, we choose to let it ride. We choose to explore. We think that's more natural. Pixel Floyd in chat says, I feel like it's so empowering to be able to meditate amidst the chaos of family life, work, and societal pressures. Cool story. Okay, sidetrack. I was in a private lesson with my Taoist teacher, who his name is George Thompson. He's got a YouTube channel. You should check him out. He's back in China, so we had to start our lessons together. But he told me a story of the Emperor and the Three Paintings, which really gets at the heart of the matter, where you meditate within the midst of your chaotic life or family. All right, I'm going to tell it the best I can. Here we go. Once upon a time, there was an emperor, and he wanted a painting that expressed true tranquility, peaceful tranquility. So he went to his servant and he ordered him to find the 3 best painters in all the land to come and paint this painting. So a week later, the servant comes back and says, Emperor, I have gathered the 3 best painters in all of our kingdom who promise that they can paint true tranquility. And they have their paintings. The emperor said, great. So he went out to inspect them, and he looked at the first painting, and the first painting was of a beautiful forest, um, lush green grass and animals, you know, all around, and not a cloud in the sky, just a beautiful nature scene. And the emperor said, hmm. So he moved to the second painting. The second painting was of a snowy, ice covered mountain, right? I mean, just the purest, most beautiful snow you've ever seen. Not a single foot trail or it's freshly fallen powdered snow. And the emperor looked at it and said, yes. So then he got to the third painter, and the third painter painted this insane waterfall crashing on the rocks and, spraying everywhere and, smashing, breaking things down at the bottom. And the servant was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I I will get this out of your way right now, Emperor, and I apologize." He swore he could paint tranquility for you, and I'll do away with this right now. I'm so sorry. And the emperor said, "Wait, look closer. Look at underneath the waterfall, beside the waterfall." And the servant looked, and in a tree beside the waterfall was a nest. And in this nest, a bird slept soundly. And the emperor looked at the painter of number 3 and said, "Indeed, this is true, peaceful tranquility." So, what is inner peace? Is inner peace the being able to control everything outwardly? No, it's in here. So even though the world around you rages on and you remain calm and you remain steadfast in who you are, when the rest of the world is like a waterfall crashing into the rocks. Indeed. Yeah, I love that story. Pixel Floyd is a great story. I've never heard it before until just a few weeks ago. But I love it. Yeah, it's super cool. Okay, let's move on. Chapter 88, Interpretation. The sage whose words are ambiguous you call great. Those who advocate discipline you shun. With one, you treat words the way you want. With the other, you resent having no quarter. It is unfortunate that we need the words of the wise. Though they are essential to our beginnings on our spiritual path, they can cause problems because they must be interpreted to be understood. Because words are imperfect, every generation rewrites itself. People love ambiguity, especially when it comes to religion. They can interpret things any way they want. If they are unhappy with the cast given to a particular teaching, they invent ways to circumvent it, which is why we have so many authorities, schools, and sects. It is no accident that the most revered sages are dead. They aren't around to correct our misguided notions, to change their teachings, or even to make mistakes that might mitigate our reverence. Christ, Mohammed, Buddha, Lao Tzu, how many of us are actually devoted to the wisdom that they embody? Or have we made them mere screens upon which we project our own ideas? It is important to spend time with a living teacher, one who can correct mistakes and discipline you. But the object of such studies should not be the creation of a new orthodoxy. Rather, your goal should be to bring yourself to a state of independence. All teachings are mere references. The true experience is living your own life. But even the holiest of words are only words. All right, back to the words. Oh, the words. Can't get enough words. You ever watch the news and you hear about a new people group? It's amazing how many there are. Um, there's always a new one. People seem to love to subdivide themselves into just an unlimited number of categories, right? Oh, I am from this country, but really, maybe I'm an American, but maybe my ancestors were from this, and so maybe I should be this, or maybe I, even to move off just who we are. Like, what about like musical genres? Like, do you remember being like, so I'm 41, and I remember when I was a kid, there were like 4 genres. There was like rock, there was classic rock, there was classical, and then eventually, when I was like 10, there was rap. And that was it, right? There were 4 genres. There was like old rock, current rock, oh, and pop. Okay, so maybe that was 5. But now there's like a million genres. There's indie rock, and there's pop rock, and there's punk, and there's pop punk, and there's emo, and there's rap and hip hop, or you can just have rap or just have hip hop, and then you have all the million kinds of electronic music. But it's just, it never ends, right? Never, ever, ever ends. And the division, the words that we use to constantly describe ourselves impacts our spirituality too. Have you ever looked up the tree of life for religions? So it takes every school of thought for every major world religion and branches them like a tree back to some of their original sources. And there are hundreds of them. I mean, let's just take a look at Christianity, which is the one I know best. That's how I was raised. I mean, you've got the Catholics and you've got Protestants, and that breaks down to Baptists or Methodists. And then you've got, your kind of fringe Christians like the Mormons, or you've got, it just goes on and on with the Lutherans, and it never ends. And it's non-denominational. Like, that was a big thing when I was a teenager. We had Bible churches, and we had, and you have like, even the Jews, you have Orthodox Judaism, and you have, the Russian Orthodox Church, and it's crazy. Like, and even in Taoism, you have several different schools of thought. And Buddhism has the same thing. Every religion, you just have to keep dividing, don't you? There's something about it to where you're like, nope, I disagree with this, so I'm not that school of thought. I'm more important. my train of thought is way better than this 1,000-year-old school of teaching. I know better. So that's really what this chapter is getting at, right? Like, when you study religion or you study spirituality, right? Yes, everything is open for interpretation, and these old masters are all dead, so they can't combat you when you misinterpret something. If you misinterpret it and it's not what they meant, well, it's not like they're here to tell you no. So we just interpret things the way we are, and we go about our day, and we find people who agree with us, and we group ourselves together. Just take the Tao Te Ching. Like, the Tao Te Ching was written in ancient Chinese. So if you go to a bookstore and you find a copy of the Tao Te Ching that was published any time in the last 2,000 years, that's a translation. That's from ancient Chinese to Mandarin. That's not the same. Those characters don't look the same. The meanings have changed over time. So even right there, even before you leave the country, you're already into a translation and an interpretation. And then you take the modern translation and move to English or French or German. Who knows? right? Who knows what they originally meant? It's all up for interpretation. It's all up for debate. But to prove the point, just because we disagree does not mean we aren't together. Just because I read chapter 2 of the Tao Te Ching and you have a different interpretation or different understanding does not make us at odds or against each other. In fact, Taoism would tell us that that's intended. These chapters are poems. They're written specifically and intentionally as poetry. It rhymes in Chinese in some places. So to sit here on this stream and to try and tell you that everything I say is true, and that if you see it differently, you're wrong, would be a disaster. Not only because I'd be a hypocrite, but it'd be a disaster for people listening. My thoughts on this subject matter is simply my thoughts. I would never call myself a master. I would never call myself a wise man. Just ask my kids. If you ever get an ego, just have kids. And man, that'll fix you real quick. They'll knock you right off your high horse. Real quick. The Tao, doing what comes naturally within that Tao, you're never gonna be 100% the same with anyone on anything, and that's okay. We just learned in the last chapter we're supposed to explore. We're supposed to go out and feel new things and experience new things. Nobody's life is like yours. So how can any one text or ancient master say that for thousands of years into the future, you all have to be this way? And it's always going to be this way, no matter what. It doesn't make sense to me. And in a Taoist philosophical perspective, it doesn't make sense there either. The world is too difficult to understand. So that's why we experience it. That's why sitting in our homes alone is not how to experience your life. You have to go out. You have to interpret. You have to think. And you're encouraged to do so. If I read something in this chapter and you disagree with me, that's great. I would love to hear about it, because I remember sitting in my first Taoism class and we would read text together. We would read a chapter of the Tao Te Ching and someone would say what they thought it meant. And I was like, oh no, that's not what I thought. And I just would sit there and I thought I was stupid. I just didn't say anything. But you know what? 3 years later, I'm sitting with the same Taoist teacher in a private lesson. And he told me once, he's like, I remember when you got into those classes with me and you would say things, and he agreed with my interpretation sometimes over the interpretation of other students. So you never know, right? You never know if the interpretation you have is good or not good or bad or wrong, because there is no good, there is no bad, there is no right, there is no wrong. It's just you and your thoughts and how it affects you and how it affects those around you. You can't put that into words. So go live it. Pixel Floyd, Gary, lots of things are lost in translation. Indeed. I used to work for a Bible translation company. We were a fundraising arm for Bible translation work, mainly in Africa. But man, the translation work is intense. I have seen it firsthand, what translating religious text is like, and it is complicated and stressful. You want to see a bunch of people who are stressed out? Go look at people translating the Bible into a quote random African language in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, stressed people out. But I don't know. It's hard to say. I know they do their best. They're always doing their best. It's not like they just sat there and made it up as they went along. They didn't just go crazy with it. But sometimes words don't exist in the other language. Or, Eskimos have like a dozen words for ice. Right? It's crazy. It's wild sometimes how different languages can be. So yeah, it's up for debate. Everything is up for debate, and I'd love to hear from you. If you get to reading the Tao Te Ching or Taoist text, or you're listening to this podcast, absolutely let me know. Let me hear from you, especially if you disagree. Okay, we're gonna do one more because technical difficulties at the beginning. There was no audio for like 10 minutes, so we're gonna go ahead and do one more to try and stretch it out to that hour. Okay. Chapter 89, Disengagement. Warily I open my prayer book. Sepia photograph of sage on amber page. Flaming raven Sanskrit. Strange syllables. In tone, chant, repeat. Number vows with beads. Every resolution is inspiration petrified. There are some days when one is disengaged from Tao, not interested in devotion, and everything just becomes an empty form. Gone are spiritual bliss, deep insight, and integration with the rhythm of the universe. Instead, there is duty, form, and stiff discipline. One can try to remember the reasons for one's quest, think of the achievements of the past, reaffirm one's goals, and still not be inspired to do one's practice. What do you do? Every once in a while, it is permissible to skip things for a day. If you are angry, under great stress, or ill, then it is best simply to rest. But if one has made vows, it is only a matter of laziness or indifference. Then you must exert your discipline and practice, even if it means that you are just going through the motions. In at least half the cases, something significant will happen. The rest of the time, going through your forms in itself a good practice. It builds a tremendous momentum that will manifest itself in later times. Okay. Disengagement. So I don't have it on right now. I should have put my necklace on. The yin yang. Oh, you know what? I do have a copy of it. It is right here on the cover of this book I showed you earlier. Yin yang is supposed to be in motion. Now we always see the yin yang in a picture, but it doesn't move. There's always one color on top of the other. But in reality, the yin yang turns. Black over white, white over black, a little bit of white inside the black, and a little bit of black inside the white. And then it changes forever and ever. So on one hand, some days you will work really hard. You'll study. You'll feel motivated. You'll read and you'll find some new understanding. Maybe you'll meditate and reach a new level of thought. But sometimes you won't. Sometimes you'll be frustrated. Sometimes you'll feel bad. Sometimes you just don't want to do it. You ever gotten out of bed and you're like, damn, I don't want to do this today. Like, I'm just not motivated. I don't want to go to work. I don't want to deal with all this stuff. I don't want to do the dishes. I don't do my laundry. It's awful sometimes. Life is rough. Life is hard. I get it. Right? I've been there. I'm still here. I'm alive. I don't pretend to have it all figured out or be some smart, wise guy. Like, I'm just a guy. Just a guy in Texas who's talking into a microphone, into a camera once a week. And then I write sometimes. But that's okay. The yin yang and Taoism teaches us that is expected behavior because we're human, because that's how the universe works. And we shouldn't beat ourselves up because we didn't want to do it today, right? We should allow that ebb and flow to come and go naturally, just like our emotions. We're angry and then we're not angry. We're motivated and then we're not motivated. So, how can we stay motivated all the time? How can we stay sad all the time? We can't. It's not possible. It's not natural. It's not possible. I don't believe it's possible. So when you wake up that day and you think, man, I don't want to sit here and meditate for 20 minutes. All right. If you don't feel good, then don't do it. However, if you have set yourself a goal, if you have said, well, I'm going to do this every day for 30 days, now that's a little different because that's when you start to push yourself. And it's in the struggle to push yourself that we overcome, that we grow. Have you ever seen a tree grow sideways? Usually those trees are really strong because they had to work at getting to the nutrients that they needed to survive, right? It made them stronger by struggling. And a lot of times those trees that grow with no struggle, and they just go straight, will blow over faster. And so too is our practice. When we push ourselves to do something and it's hard, then we gain more than had we not pushed ourselves. So don't let laziness stand in your way of your growth. At the same time, you know, if you can't sit because you're sick and you're dizzy and you're gonna barf, don't do that either. It's all bad, right? That's bad. So listen to your body, listen to your mind, listen to the world around you, and be in balance. Try to see the signs and the goals that your body is telling you. You know, when you're sick, you'll know. You know, when you're sick, your body has mechanisms to alert you to pain and suffering. And it's important to rest when you need to. But when you're not sick, it's important to strive. It's important to make goals, set those daily practices, and to continue with them, especially when they're difficult, especially when they're hard. So be the yin yang. Engage, disengage, struggle, don't struggle. Let all things come naturally and let everything have its own course and time. Okay. Well, that's going to be it for this week. I really appreciate you guys coming. There were a number of you guys who decided to come to the live stream. Next week, things should look a little different on stream because I'll be using this. I got myself a new camera. I'm waiting. Unfortunately, the cable didn't come in time for this week, but things are looking up. So hopefully you'll join me next week live Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Central Time. And if not, you can subscribe to this podcast on all major podcast networks, Apple, Spotify, all the above, the Taoist Corner podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Stewart. I'll see you again next week. Thank you all so much for joining me. Bye.